Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I'm Tyler. Joining me with me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. You'll notice probably right off the bat that my audio is not what it normally is. Neither is my video. Video is still okay. Audio not as great. I'm in Oklahoma for Christmas. My wife's from Oklahoma, so we came out here for Christmas break. But all my stuff is still in Utah. So we're kind of doing a makeshift podcast right now, but we have to do it. But before that, be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias. Go on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok. All those great things. And also a thank you to everybody who was involved with Rocking Around the 412 this year. It was a great year. We raised over $6,000. We were able to help. It was 23 families or 23
kids. Yeah.
23 kids, which is great. That's awesome to hear and awesome to see. And just really wanted to just say, normally we shout out the podcast to give it light, but Christmas has passed. So thank you to everybody that donated. We really appreciate it every year. Like Smitty says all the time, this is honestly the best thing that we're a part of when it comes to Rocking Around the 412 year after year. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to everybody who donated, everybody who shared the page, everybody who even just looked at it. Thank you for that. And also, we want to make it just keep growing this thing. Honestly, it's like we said, it's probably the best thing that we do. Not even probably, it definitely is. But it was another great year for Rocking Around the 412. There's going to be some awesome prizes that some of you are going to be able to win. We're going to raffle those off, I'm sure, in the near future. But yeah, just wanted to give a thank you to everyone involved.
Yeah, I wanted to give another big thank you. We didn't do a show last week, so by the way, hope everybody had a Merry Christmas as well. But yeah. I wanted to give another big thank you to Kaylee, who was involved with this. That's, we talked about Isla on here, who was supposed to be one of the kids that we took care of this Christmas with the Rock Around the 412 mission, the 2-year-old daughter of my late friend Dalton. And when I reached out to Kaylee, I've told this story, so if you guys are hearing me say it over and over again, but you're going to hear it one more time, and then it's going to lead to something else. But when I reached out to her, she said, that's awesome, but from a financial standpoint, we're fine if we could pay it forward. So what we did is we adopted 15 kids from the Salvation Army in Dalton's name to give them their Christmas. So that's how that number is 23. 15 of them came from the Salvation Army here, which I always talk about. We're sponsored by Teeks Barbershop in East Rochester, PA. The Salvation Army is in East Rochester, PA. I had no clue where this building was.
There you go.
It's literally 7 minutes from my house. So I went there and was there for like 2.5 hours with Kaylee and just learning about them. They have a church right inside there. They're also a food bank. They have 55 kids that go there every day after school for after school like activities and stuff like that. The director's husband teaches every kid there either guitar or drums. They get to pick which one they want to learn. So it's just like really cool, everything that goes on there. And, just learning more about them. But anyway, what I wanted to say as far as Kaylee goes, she adopted 3 kids on her own for this thing. So we took care of 12. She took care of 3. But also we've been texting afterwards and stuff like that. She's just like, she wasn't really in the Christmas spirit this year, and reasonably so with everything that occurred. When she got involved with this, it brought her Christmas spirit back. And she wants to be involved every year now. So I think we're going to have some involvement with the Salvation Army going forward every year to some capacity. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what that's going to be. I will say that I've had some conversations with the director about becoming like an official partner of the Salvation Army. So we'll see if that's something that comes of this. But just really cool, really good work there that's going on. You guys have obviously heard of the Salvation Army well before we've talked about it. So you guys know that you can just get involved literally by going to their website and checking them out. But this one specifically, the one in Rochester that I'm talking about, they also do have their own Facebook page. So you can go and check out them as well and see specifically what they got going on at their site. But anyway, and again, another shout out to everybody that was involved with this thing, but a big shout out to Kaylee as well for her selflessness and wanting to be so involved with what we're doing. So really good stuff. Without further ado, I guess we can kind of talk about some sports now, even though it's not the most desirable thing to talk about from top to bottom. We'll start with the Pirates, which everybody wants to definitely hear about. They signed Rich Hill, which like name value, boom. Like he's definitely a name that we've heard of before. 42 years old, but I will say still relatively effective last year for the Red Sox, pitching in, what is considered the toughest division for pitchers to pitch in the AL East. The numbers were actually a little bit better than what they look like on the surface. The advanced stuff looks a little bit better. He's obviously not going to be a hard thrower at 42 years old, but I think he checks a lot of boxes for the Pirates in 2023, being that first off, he's a lefty. They needed a veteran for sure on the staff, and I think that he checked both those boxes. And he's still, like I said, relatively effective. I think he can slot in as like the number 3 probably in the rotation behind Keller and Rowanzi, and offer them just like a guy that's going to just eat innings until we get like Burrows here, Ortiz, Priest, or some of these guys that are chomping at the bit to get up here. Rich Hill's going to provide some innings until that happens. So I have no issues with this signing for 1 year, $8 million. I mean, it's a $3 million increase on what he was making last year. And I think for him, he's probably looking at this like he could parlay this into something more. I don't know that he finishes the year as a Pirate. We probably, when we get to the trade deadline, hopefully he helps us, get some back prospect compensation or something like that. And then he gets to pitch for a contender in a postseason stretch. So I think that this is a great scenario. I understand the age concerns, but it's a 1 year deal. So like, who cares?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably kind of like a Jose Quintana of last year, a veteran guy that you bring in to help your team and help the younger pitchers on the staff. But when you're close to the deadline, as long as he's performing okay, you could probably move on from him there and gain some assets through that. When I saw the signing, it seemed interesting just because it's actually a guy that I've heard of before.
Yeah.
And so that was always a good thing. And funny enough, did you know that he's played for 12, or this is going to be his 12th team?
Yeah, which is odd because
he signed so many 1 year deals the past like several years. I was looking at his baseball reference, and he's been on. Let me just see real quick. So like 1 year deals. He's been with Baltimore for 1 year, New York with 1 year, LA, Cleveland, Oakland, Tampa Bay, New York Mets, Minnesota. All these are just he's been on with the team for 1 year. Pirates are probably going to add to that list, but it'll be his 12th team.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like you, like I looked at that and I thought 42 years old, but it's like at this point with the Pirates, who really cares how old they are? And his numbers say he's going to be effective, and so I think it's a good thing. I think the team overall is fairly young still. There's a lot of youth on this team, and not that we're going to have some Rich Hill be somebody that's going to be someone with that experience that gets him into the playoffs or anything like that. But it's good to have a veteran presence on the team when you have so much youth on the team. It just kind of helps, I feel like, transition a lot of the younger guys to that big league level and be able to feel more comfortable. And it's still a guy, like, no matter how bad the Pirates are this year, still a guy that can bring some value and guys that are a guy that can help teach these young guys things and like just little tips here and there throughout the season, stuff that they might not have known otherwise. So a guy that's been there, done that. I think it's good for the Pirates. Doesn't make them a contender. Heck no, but it's an intriguing signing to say the least.
I think what it does do, though, is tell you that they're finally focused on improving, even if it's marginally at the MLB level in 2023. It's not going to be a huge increase, but I think that it's at least a sign that they're going to. I'm not going to say try or anything like that. I'm not going to throw these words around, but I think that it's at least an improvement on what they had at the major league level in 2022. So.
We have some broken trust that needs to be healed before we can throw around the try word.
Yeah, for sure.
We got to be like Yoda in Star Wars. Do or do not. There is no try.
There you go. I will say the second part of it that's intriguing to me is who does he push out from what we thought the rotation was going to look like? Because is Vince Velasquez now like that borderline like swingman like we kind of hope that he would be? Or does this open up the idea of like a trade of JT Brubaker? Because I've seen that thrown around as well.
Or, I mean, could it push Brubaker just to a permanent bullpen role?
It could.
I think Brubaker is one that is probably a high candidate for me personally, just because he hasn't quite met fan expectations, and not necessarily just fan expectations, but probably the expectations of the Pirates when it comes to being a starter. So if he's going to continue to be on this team, it feels like it's going to be out of the bullpen. But from there on out, I mean, it could very well be a trade, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think it depends on what his value would be in a trade. Just because I could see the bullpen thing, just because we've seen him be effective, one or two times through an order. But and I guess that's a lot of starters though today. Like that's why you only see starters be able to get through 5 innings, because that third time through, they're getting crushed at that point. So, but Brubaker's definitely a guy where it's like he'll look effective for 3-4 innings and then that's it. So maybe he would benefit from being like this year's version of Will Crow. So we'll see. That I think that anything is a possibility at this point. I don't know what the Pirates are thinking, because I wasn't expecting them to add another pitcher, to be quite honest with you. So I'm pleasantly surprised to see them bring in a lefty for sure.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the Steelers. So not necessarily a great game start to finish on Christmas Eve, but what a finish in honor of Franco Harris that we saw on Christmas Eve. Kenny Pickett putting together a game-winning drive. He did something that not only no rookie has done, but no quarterback in NFL history, converting a fourth down run and passing for 75 yards on a game-winning drive. No quarterback in history had apparently done that, which is pretty crazy for me. But shout out to him. I think that for the majority of the game, I don't want to say he looked uncomfortable, and it's not like he wasn't hitting throws. I think that he answered some people's questions actually in this game, to be quite honest with you, because even though we weren't seeing like the aired out deep ball, I think that people have a misconception of how you evaluate arm strength. When you see him hitting some of the throws that he was hitting on out routes, like the one to Deontay Johnson, where like everybody like holds their breath because it looks like it's going to be a pick six, but it gets there. Like the zip that he was putting on these footballs on Saturday night was pretty crazy. And that is a good determination of where his arm strength is. So I don't think that you have to question that. Also playing in those elements. He had the one pick, but he didn't fumble the ball. There was obviously some concerns about that because of the hand size. I think that he showed he can play in these elements, even though, 6 years of Pitt, we should have known this going into the game. That was still a question that people had when they drafted him. But I thought that Kenny played overall pretty well. Again, there were some throws that he'd like to have back. Obviously, the interception wasn't very good, but that is always going to be, when you put together a game-winning drive the way that he did, a lot of that stuff that happened before it, people are just going to completely forget about. What did you think about Kenny Pickett on Saturday night?
I thought it was good. I mean, if you look at the box score just by itself, it seemed like a pretty average to above average game from Kenny Pickett. But I think when you factor in just like the external factors when it comes to like the weather and the environment that they were playing in, I feel like it was pretty tough for all those players, especially a quarterback throwing that ball. I mean, I'm sure that ball felt hard as a rock as well. So trying to get grip on it is pretty tough. And just to touch on the arm strength, I think a lot of the times you can see guys' arm strength is it's more impressive when they can make these out route throws and throws towards the sideline across the field than just pushing the ball down the field. I think that's a lot of times where you can see true arm strength. So you saw that from Kenny. But I thought it was good. I mean, even leading up to the game-winning drive, I thought that it was good overall. I think Steeler fans are seeing the poise from Kenny Pickett, which is honestly what we need and what we want. I don't. There's no too high and there's no too low with him, and that included on Saturday night. I think that whether or not he makes a mistake, like he makes that pick, and that was his first pick in several games, which is great to hear after the first half of the season that he had. He had 3 games in a row without a turnover. So he did have the one in this game. It's a shame, but at the same time, he's made these strides and made these improvements, and I think we physically had seen that. And like you and I talked about, we know the mentality of Kenny Pickett, and we knew that was going to stay the same no matter what. And I just think you're seeing him get more mature at this NFL level. And even Tomlin talking to, there was a snippet that came out talking to his lineman, like looking him in the eyes, like, we're growing up today. We are growing up tonight, playing in this game and playing in this cold weather. This is where men grow up. So I think you're seeing that from the team as a whole, but also just Kenny himself. That drive, what was he, 7 for 9 and drove the field 75 yards for that score. And the throw to George Pickens. Looking at it just laterally, it doesn't look as impressive as when you see the vertical throw and how the window was for Kenny. It's not like that was a wide open throw. Like that, he had to hit the window that Pickens was in. He was able to do it. I thought that was so impressive, and just goes to in hand with what I was saying about just his maturity as an NFL quarterback. We've been seeing that throughout many, many weeks. And I think this is kind of just a even bigger stepping stone. What do you look like in the 2-minute drill? What do you look like when the pressure is at its highest? And he delivered.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about something. First off, I also want to mention that it's pretty crazy. I mean, say what you will about them. We've bashed them, but we have also said that, for offensive line play, for defensive line play, they probably are one of the better sources to go to. That's PFF. They have Kenny Pickett graded as the number 3 quarterback since week 12 in all of football, behind only Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, which is pretty crazy to hear. I think that everything up until the 20 looks really good for this offense right now. But I don't have the answer to this. I'm curious what you think. Why can they not put points on the board? I understand they had 2 missed field goals again on Saturday, but it's like, why are we even getting to a point where they look so good up until field goal range and then drives just completely stall out?
Yeah, and I think this is more so on the play calling than it is more so the guys on the field. I mean, obviously they have to execute, but I honestly think it could just be a mental thing when it comes to Matt Canada. I don't know if he's either overthinking himself when it comes to calling that next play, but you see it between the 20s, how consistent they can move the ball at times. But once you get in that red zone, something stalls out. And I don't think that's just going to be because the defense is making red zone adjustments. I think that it has to do with what schemes and what plays are being called in those red zones. And sure, like a lot of it can be chalked up to guys not catching the ball or Kenny not making a throw or the offensive line not getting all their blocks. That's going to be happening every game. But when it is happening this consistency, I tend to put the blame more on the offensive coordinator, which is, I know, shocking. I'm blaming Matt Canada for something else, but I genuinely think it is. I think that whether it's him overthinking or just not being able to process what he thinks the right players could call correctly, I don't know what his mental state is. I just feel like it has to do with the play calling for how consistent this has been game in and game out.
Yeah, I want to ask you something about him. Actually, I didn't have this on here, but I just thought about it. But I also want to say, to me, the biggest thing is piggybacking off of the offensive coordinator thing, because the way this offense is set up, they're really not built to make up for mistakes, I don't think. So it's like they always seem to have one penalty that just completely kills a drive, and they are not the type of offense that can make up for that. So they need to stay on schedule. They need to get, like 7+ yards on first down to be able to convert, which, by the way, they've done a really good job of. I must say, they are one of the more efficient offenses in the NFL since the bye week. And the rate that they've been converting third downs, if they were doing it for the entire season, they'd be in the top 5 of the entire NFL. So, shout out to the adjustments that they've made in that area. But I wanted to ask you regarding Matt Canada, because there's been some reports coming out about him. Do you think that there's truth to the fact that he's not going to be back next year and that's already been determined? Because it apparently has leaked that the organization has basically said this, like he's going to coach out these 2 games and they will be moving on in the offseason. Do you think that there's any truth to this?
We've talked about this before, and I always said that I thought that Matt Canada was going to be coming back as the offense improves. I just don't see the Steelers as an organization that is like predetermining that they're cutting ties with them. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm sure that's the case because they've have a history of never letting people go during the season. It's always after the fact. So that could be the case. I just can't imagine the Steelers, if the offense is improving, being able to make that gut call if we still need to let this guy go. That just doesn't seem like the way they operate. And so personally, I would say no. I don't think that has any truth to it. It could, but I just don't think the Steelers operate like that. And I feel like if the guy's already under contract, because that's the big thing, is they don't have to do anything. He's already under contract. It's not like they're giving him a new contract. They have to fire him if they want him let go. So I just don't see the Steelers being able to do that if the offense continues to improve like the way it has. It still's got his quirks, but I mean, from games like 1 through 6, I feel like the offense is night and day.
Yeah. I guess I'm in the basically where you are. Like I'll believe it when I see it because of the way that I've
Yeah.
seen this organization historically operate. They don't fire coaches. They will definitely let their contracts run out and not renew them. And in order to do that, Canada would have to be here in 2023. But there is a ton of smoke to this. Like I've seen it online. I've seen it from reputable people that I trust have talked about it. So we'll see. But again, it's just hard for me to envision them going against. But again, we talked about the Steelers' way. They've gone against that recently, though. Maybe this is like an Omar Khan thing. This is a new regime. So I guess it's possible. But I mean, I would, despite what we're talking about with the improvements that they've had on offense, I tend to lean, and I feel like I'm just taking away everything from Matt Canada. I'm not saying he's not part of what we've seen them do in the second half of the season and some of the solutions. But I think it's honestly more about the personnel growing than it is the offensive coordinator. I still think that the play calling leaves a lot to be desired, and he has no feel for how to call a game. So I would still 100% be moving on. But I understand where you're coming from, where it's like when you see this team's taking strides offensively, if Kenny's comfort level is growing with Matt Canada as the OC, would they make that switch? I guess the one thing that is good is I have no problems really if they want to keep, his quarterback coach, Mike Sullivan, still around. And maybe that's where Kenny's comfort level really is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I have no problem with Mike Sullivan sticking around with Kenny. And like when we were talking midseason, if Matt Canada could be let go, we were talking about Mike Sullivan being the play caller. If they do and truly get rid of Matt Canada, I really want it to be an outside hire. Like unless Kenny is just dead set on it being Mike Sullivan, I just don't want an internal hire from the Steelers because they happen way too often. They don't always work out, and I just want some new blood in there, some new flesh. I want new ideas, and I feel like that also is something that's kind of against the grain for how the Steelers normally operate. Because I mean, after they got rid of Todd Haley, it was just internal hire for Randy Fichtner and internal hire for Matt Canada, easy transition. So we haven't seen an external hire for an offensive coordinator or for a coordinator in general for a while. And so it's tough to say whether that could happen, but I would prefer Mike Sullivan stay as the quarterback's coach. Matt Canada is gone. Whether I think he is or not, that's neither here nor there. I want him gone. And then bring in an outside guy. I would love nothing more than someone new in that building.
Yeah, same. I mean, some names are going to be floated around. There's been some smoke to that Tampa Bay would let Byron Leftwich go after the season with their offense has had, and I know that there's some ties there. I don't love what he's done as a play caller. I think generally speaking, the offensive scheme is fine, but I don't love him as a play caller. This is all about Kenny to me. So to me, it's got to be somebody that has the play calling experience, but also we've seen like some type of track record with developing a young quarterback. And that's why like Frank Reich comes to mind. Now, that would be a huge leap for the Steelers. That's almost like an upgraded version of what they did with Todd Haley, a former NFL head coach who had gotten fired, and they're bringing in to be an offensive coordinator for a year or two, and hopefully he rebounds and it goes better than Todd Haley's tenure did, where Todd Haley didn't like end up getting another head coaching position somewhere else. He made a lateral move and ended up being the Browns offensive coordinator. But I think that would be like the big fish get. There's some other names that could honestly be floated out there, but like I know people have said Deuce Staley, another guy with Pittsburgh ties, obviously. I think he's a tremendous coach, but again, no quarterback experience, no play calling experience. So that's why he's like not really on my personal radar.
It's a shame because I feel like the Steelers are a year too late into the offensive coordinator search. Because I feel like last year there was a lot of options in the offseason when it comes to multiple quarterback coaches and offensive analysts or offensive like passing play coordinators and everything like that could have been good candidates and did land jobs at different locations. And so it just feels like the Steelers are too little too late when it comes to searching for their offensive coordinator, at least for guys that are currently like in the NFL right away that seem obvious. I'm sure as the offseason progresses, there will be guys that emerge in that case, but as of right now, looking at it on the surface, it just seems like from the guys that were hired in last season's off season for offensive coordinator positions, it just seems like the Steelers are just too far behind.
Look at how some of those guys are, like Mike Kafka, who was the Chiefs quarterbacks coach, is the offensive coordinator for the Giants. And I mean, I feel like, look at the resurgence that
Look at
they've
how
gotten from Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Like,
yeah.
so yeah, there's some other guys that very well could be true. I mean, that's a good point. If they were looking for an offensive coordinator last year, and they probably should have been, one of those guys were on the market. So we'll see, who the hot candidates are. We'll see what ends up happening. They might not even be in the market for one, and it could be Matt Canada.
I wonder if it's a case where, because we talked about like, oh, Matt Canada needs a mobile quarterback. He might do better with a young quarterback. I wonder if that's how the Steelers viewed it as well, like getting new blood in that building for him to work with, or if they just looked at it like, we have this guy under contract, we're not getting rid of
him. Maybe. I don't know. But again, knowing like what we do about how the Steelers operate, I think it was more of just, there's no way he's going to be one and done. So this year, maybe, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him again in 2023.
Right.
I want to flip this around and talk about the defensive side of the football in this game. Let's start with Cam Heyward. What a dominant performance this was. And it just makes sense, right? To have like Franco's passing and something just that's so historic to the franchise going on, celebrating the immaculate reception. He just seems to take those things like personal. That's why he's a Pittsburgh Steeler through and through, and what he embodies being a Pittsburgh Steeler. So for him to have this type of performance on primetime on Christmas Eve, honoring Franco, the immaculate reception, it just made so much sense. But this was one of his best career games. And I feel like it's kind of been in a nice stretch of football that he's had leading up to this, but he was pretty quiet for a while there. And he's all of a sudden just, now he looks like the Cam Heyward that we've seen the last couple of years that we've been talking about, just aging like fine wine at 33 years old. It was just a dominant performance on Saturday.
Yeah, it was great. And I feel like he does step up in these types of moments. I mean, I think back to what him and his brother did during that game in Atlanta, whenever all the emotions were surrounding like his dad and everything. And, and Cam Heyward's a guy that we haven't really harped on too much this season for not performing like his old self. And I feel like that has to do with, like, you look at the age and you look at that number and it's like, well, what should we expect from this guy? I mean, we know what we've gotten from him, but I feel like we haven't been too overly critical of him. And now we don't need to be critical. This is a great performance on Sunday, really causing a lot of Saturday, really causing a lot of disruption on that line. And I feel like you said, aging like fine wine and really showing no signs of slowing down that much. Like I was just talking about how he didn't have some of the same production, but I never really thought he was overly bad this season. It's just he wasn't getting some of the same production that he was. He's gotten that this past several seasons or the past several games. And, I do think that because of the way Cam Heyward is and because of his personality, what the Steelers organization means to him, he understands what games like this mean. And they were honoring Franco regardless, so people were going to get up for it. But then whenever you have Franco passing away right before the game happens, I feel like that struck a different chord and meant a little more to the guys. I mean, They arrived all in Franco Harris jerseys to the game, and they probably knew, like, this is a must win. I mean, not just for playoff hopes and winning season hopes and all that sort of stuff, but like the Steelers, they were not going to lose this game. And that, I feel like that mentality starts with guys like Cam Heyward. He's just, like you said, he's a Steeler through and through. He understands not just the play on the field, but the mentality that whenever you're a Steeler, you need to have. And I feel like we probably has several players not necessarily lose that mentality, but they never really gain that mentality as a Steeler. Some of the more recent guys, like they have a different mentality than the guys that you and I grew up watching. Like when you think of the Super Bowl winning teams of our childhood, those guys had that Steeler mentality. And I feel like Cam Heyward is one of the guys on that team. And maybe it's because he's been around for so long and played with some of those guys that he has that Steeler mentality still. And he's a good guy to have in the locker room, but to spread that to other newer players as well. But yeah, he understood the assignment on Saturday, and he was able to play his tail off, and he got it done. The Steelers in general got it done, and I think they all knew what this game meant, not just for the Steelers, but for the city in general.
Well, to go off to springboard off your point, maybe those guys now take this opportunity to like look at themselves in the mirror and say, look at what this game meant. You know, despite us going into this game as a 6-8 team, look how much this immaculate reception, this celebration, the celebration of Franco's life meant to this city and what we mean to this city. And they developed that Steelers mentality just through this. You know, maybe it's an opportunity for those guys to do it. To your point,
Yeah.
Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, those guys, when like legends or, you know, past Steelers talk about them, that's one of the first things that's always said is these guys could have played on any Steelers football team. They could have played with on those Super Bowl teams. They could have been a part of those rosters, those championship rosters. They have to now be the ones to carry that, and not saying that they aren't, but they need to keep passing it down too in order for that tradition and the Steelers way to continue to be passed down. So no, that was a really good point that you know, some guys, and that's not necessarily like a knock on them. It just is what it is. Like there's a different way of doing things now, and you know, that's why messages can get stale, and it's really amazing that Mike Tomlin has lasted as long as he has and as successful as he is. So the other player I wanted to highlight on defense and talk to you about, because we didn't do a show last week, we didn't get to talk about Alex Highsmith being snubbed from the Pro Bowl, but he got his 12th sack on Saturday, which is good for tied for third in the AFC, in the top 10 in the NFL in general. He's the only player in the top 10 that's not on the Pro Bowl roster. His teammate TJ Watt, who we were just talking about, despite missing the time that he did make the Pro Bowl. Just some quick thoughts on the fact that Alex Highsmith did not make the Pro Bowl. I mean, to me, I don't know how, tied third in the AFC in sacks, top 10 in general. Alex Highsmith doesn't make the Pro Bowl. How's that possible?
I don't know. He's also tied for the league forced fumbles. It makes sense to me. When you look at the season he's had a year in his third season, and in general, when you look across the league, not only does he have the numbers to put up for it, but I think when you look that he's had this year, that should have stuck out to. I don't know what they were thinking. It's just.
I might have lost you.
Yeah, sorry about that. My internet keeps cutting in and out. I don't know why.
Well, it's good right now.
Good. Yeah, and they're just gonna get a full. This isn't gonna get cut out of the audio. This is just gonna be full
love it.
Transparency. So.
But yeah, I looked at the numbers. I didn't even bring up the lead in the league in forced fumbles. You did, but yeah, that's another good point. Is tied for the league lead in forced fumbles. I don't know how, and this is no knock, obviously, on TJ Watt. Love him. If he were healthy all season, he probably is there. But the fact that he wasn't healthy all season, I don't know how he makes the Pro Bowl over Alex Highsmith, considering what, you know, Alex has done this year. In TJ's absence a lot of the time too, you know, having to play most weeks without him on the other side. So it's really a shame for him. He'll, you know, there's going to be a guy or two that drops out, whether that be for their own health related reasons, just not wanting to be there that weekend, or maybe they're playing in the Super Bowl, their team. So a spot or two, I'm sure, will open up, and Alex could definitely get there, but he shouldn't be an alternate. He should be there regardless. So.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you were able to hear or what people were able to hear from what I was saying before it cut out, but yeah, I was basically saying similar things. It's a shame that he didn't get there, because not only does he have the numbers, but like just Steeler fans in general, I mean NFL fans too, able to see the progression that Alex Highsmith has had over his 3-year
Yeah.
career, and to really have this career year he's had, it's just a shame that he doesn't get rewarded for it in that way. And let's be honest, TJ's in there for name recognition. That's why TJ's a
Yeah.
Pro Bowler, and that
Yep.
that's why the Pro Bowl, like, yes, it does mean something when it terms to how good a player had that year, but at the same time, nobody's saying that. Nobody like that actually looks at the season so far is saying that TJ Watt had a better year than Alex Highsmith, and it's just a shame that he didn't get that chance. Or he still could, but it's a shame that he didn't get it just outright.
I wonder how much that goes into like Pro Bowl selections, goes into contract negotiations too. I don't know that it does. I'm literally asking myself right now because Alex is also going to be, this is year 3. Next year's the last year of his rookie deal. He's going to be looking for the bag, whether that's from Pittsburgh or somebody else. He's going to be due, some money here soon. So,
Yeah.
I'd hate to see him not get it, even having the production that warrants a Pro Bowl selection and not be in there automatically. I think that he ends up getting there because, like I said, I think a guy or two end up not going for different reasons. But that is what it is. A transaction. Marcus Allen goes to the IR. That biceps injury that knocked him out of that game on Saturday did require surgery, so he is done. The team signed Tate Crowder, actually like a somewhat noticeable name for me, at least off the Giants practice squad. Started all of the games last year for the Giants. Had 2 interceptions. I think he had 100 total, close to 100 total tackles. So he's a productive player for the Giants, but he was on their practice squad this year, and the Steelers pluck him off. At this point in the season, obviously he's not going to get up to speed to be able to play really any snaps on defense. I wouldn't think he's going to be a body for special teams, basically replace what Marcus Allen's role was, I would think. But hey, say this team does get the help that they need, which is what we're going to talk about here. Say they do get the help that they need and also take care of their own business and sneak into the postseason. Obviously, you're going to need some bodies for them too. So let's talk about that. They still are alive, which is pretty crazy. With 2 games left to play, they got the help they needed from the Packers, beating the Dolphins. The Chargers were able to lock up a playoff spot. So there are 6 playoff spots in the AFC accounted for now, but there's 1 still open. So what they need is Steelers obviously need to win both of their remaining games. They need the Dolphins to lose both their remaining games. Now, one of those is to the Jets. But they need the Jets to also lose one of those. So they need the Jets to lose to the Seahawks, but the Jets to beat the Dolphins. They need the Patriots to beat the Dolphins, but lose to the Bills. And then they need to take care of their own business. Pretty simple, right?
I mean, when you on paper, doesn't sound too
It's
bad.
very possible. It's very possible. Yeah.
Like when you look at those matchups, that's what I mean. Like on paper, those matchups don't sound horrible,
especially with
Steelers'
Tua
chances
being out.
Yeah, Tua being out, Jets having their quarterback problems, so they just win one of the games, and then Bills playing Miami and Seahawks playing the Jets. Like this is very doable on part of everybody outside of the Steelers. The question is whether the Steelers can win their own games. To me,
yeah. Well, we've seen
and this is exactly what I said was going to happen. The stinking Steelers, whenever they were like 2-6, I said, looking at the back half of the schedule, it eases up quite a bit, and of course, they're going to finish around the 8-9, 9-8 mark, just ho hum average, like everybody knew they were going to do. That's just what the Steelers do. Even my brother-in-law this Christmas, whenever we were in Florida. When I was talking to him earlier this season, I was saying like, yeah, the Steelers are pretty bad right now, but knowing the Steelers, they're going to probably win a big stretch of games in the late half of the season because the schedule eases up, and they're going to finish around 500. And he at the time he was just like, that's not happening. But it's like, I know the Steelers, and as frustrating as it may be when it comes to people who want the draft stock, I mean, if they manage to pull out a playoff, that is going to be a incredible performance by Mike Tomlin and co to get them there. I mean, they got to get the help, but from where they were at 2-6, I believe was at the worst, and to where they are now, it's hard to believe they've kind of dug themselves out of that hole to this point, and they've managed to get to that 7-8 record. And also Lamar not playing So that's
Yeah.
even like more like twilight in the stars that could happen. I know they already played Tyler Huntley and they did lose. Although Tyler Huntley didn't even finish that game. What's their
Neither
third
did
string's
Pickett.
name?
Anthony Brown
Anthony
Jr.
Jefferson or Anthony Brown Jr. For some
Yeah.
reason, I was going to say Anthony Jefferson. I don't know. I knew it was Anthony something. But it's crazy, but that they're in this position. But I can't say that I didn't predict it because I did. I I knew this is how it was going to play out.
Yeah.
But moving forward, I mean, it's very realistic. I don't even know what game I'm more concerned about. This Sunday night game did get flexed into Sunday Night Football, which is pretty cool. And I do like the Steelers' chances when it comes to playing in prime time. It just has a different feel to it, I think. And so I like that about this Ravens game. Plus, not having to go against Lamar and co. That's always a nice thing as well. But the Steelers also, like, when you look ahead to that Browns game too, and I know they have to win the Ravens game for any of this to matter, but they haven't played a Deshaun Watson-led Browns team yet. So I wonder what that makes a difference for the defense and just the game in general and how that will play out. But it's pretty wild that we're in this scenario and that we're going to be game watching outside of the Steelers games too and cheering
Yeah.
for these other teams as well. It's a fun scenario.
Yeah. It's crazy because like this year, honestly, like once Pickett started playing, that's what the season really became about, was his progression. The fact that we're getting, and I tweeted this, like the fact that we're getting him these meaningful reps, we're getting his feet wet in an entire offense that's like 26 years old and younger, is getting so much experience right now, still playing meaningful games. Like that's a win to me on the season, regardless of this team ends up making the playoffs or not. I have a hard time feeling like this season was a total failure. I know it's always about making the playoffs. It's about winning Super Bowls, but it's also about, the progression of your young quarterback and your young football team in a year that really looked like it was lost after we lost TJ Watt in week 1. So, again, the fact they're still playing meaningful football, I have a hard time being upset about it.
Yeah, and I talked about earlier about the pressure that Kenny was under in that 2-minute drill in that Raiders game, and even more pressure going into this. And we're going to get to see it as Steeler fans, just what kind of poise he's going to have and what kind of how he plays in the pressure of, hey, we can't control what everybody else can control, but we're going to be able to control what we can control. So we need to win these 2 games in order to give ourselves a chance to get to this playoffs. And so I feel like that's going to be an emphasis from Mike Tomlin's part, and we're going to see what Kenny and the rest of the offense and the rest of the team is able to do and run with it. I hope that they're able to pull that out. It'll be a great finish, regardless whether they even make the playoffs or not, because I know they need some help. But if they're able to finish this season winning out, I feel like that'll be a great stepping
Yeah.
stone for, I mean, a cap on this season, but then just moving forward, even without the postseason, that's just a boat of confidence for Steeler fans, but also these Steeler players, and knowing what they can do next season.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but I've actually seen people say that's the best case scenario, is that they win out but don't make the playoffs, like to get embarrassed in the playoffs, because you can, finish on a 4-game winning streak, and go into the off season like kind of riding that high to build off something, as opposed to, if they go into the playoffs and lay a complete egg against like Kansas City or Buffalo or something in their place. So I don't know. I guess I can see that perspective. Again, it's not necessarily something I agree with, but I just wanted to lay that out there because that's an opinion I've seen.
I mean, I'd still rather
for me
them make
personally,
playoffs.
I'd rather see them get their feet wet in the playoffs.
Well, and
Kenny
I
have to
feel like
play.
even if they get blown out in the playoffs, the fact that they made it there, I feel like that would probably drive the hunger more to get back, because it's not a guarantee to get back.
Right. Yeah. And then the last thing, obviously, all right, do we think that they win this football game against the Ravens? Because there is stuff that could happen earlier in the day, obviously, that makes that game meaningless before we even kick off. But yeah, do we think the Steelers beat the Ravens? So I don't want to say keep their playoff hopes alive, because they can only do their part, but
Right. Yeah, no, I do think they do. I thought that they were going to split with the Ravens in general, but the fact that we already lost the game that was played in Pittsburgh, I feel like they're going to win this game. And I do like that it was flexed into primetime football. I mean, there's just something about the Steelers playing in primetime that I feel a lot more comfortable with than I do other time slots. Not, I mean, 1 o'clock's the normal, but if we're playing a team at 1:00 or in prime time, for some reason, I just feel confident playing at that 8:15, 8:20 kick. So I like that it's played there, and I like that the Steelers have had multiple games in a row going up to this point, because when we played the Ravens last, I mean, we were kind of getting into a groove, but we weren't right quite there yet. And they've won some more football games since then. And so I think that the Steelers will feel a little better about themselves and know what to expect moving forward. And especially, like I said, without playing Lamar, they've already seen Tyler Huntley. So they just have to control what they can control. Hopefully, Kenny gets to play the whole game this time. And I think the Steelers are going to come out on top.
Well, yeah, that's the big thing for me is neither one of the quarterbacks that are starting this game got to finish that game. So Kenny obviously looking for revenge. I talked about it before that game, like really excited to see what he would do his first shot against Baltimore, because that's where so much of your Steeler legacy is going to be created, by how you play against the Baltimore Ravens and within the division. So now he's getting his hopefully first real true shot going to Baltimore in enemy territory, Sunday Night Football, in a meaningful game, hopefully by the time that they kick off. I am in agreement with you. I think that they win this football game against Baltimore and split. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they do go into Week 18 still with a shot to make the playoffs. I think they win this game, though. 23-16. They're not going to be dealing with the weather nearly as much as they did on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. So the games this week that we're rooting for, we need the Seahawks to beat the Jets?
Seahawks to beat the Jets. Seahawks to beat the Jets and Patriots to beat the Dolphins.
Okay. I mean, those are very realistic options, I feel like. And where are those games played? Do you know?
New England and Seattle.
Okay. Well, there you go. Get it done.
Yes. Yep. I mean, it's as good of a scenario as it could be, given what we need. Especially, I mean, hey, prayers to Tua.
It's not like
prayers to Tua for sure, but it's beneficial to the Steelers, obviously, that he's not out there. But man,
right, and these are realistic. Like I said, these are realistic matchups. It's not like we're banking on like the Texans to beat the Bills.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we need the Jaguars to beat the Colts last year, and it happened. So,
yeah, now the Jaguars look decent as a football team, and Trevor Lawrence looks good.
They're going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. And I'm excited to see Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs. So, all right. Final thing to talk about. I wanted to let you know that I am starting a petition for the NHL to shorten all games to 20 minutes, just one period, because I think that'd be beneficial for our Pittsburgh Penguins.
Dude, I was so ticked off because my whole family went to the game last night, like my parents and my sisters and my brother-in-law, and I was thinking, okay, this is going to be good. The Steelers or the Penguins are up 4-0, and they're going to coast to a win. Maybe Detroit gets a couple goals, but they're not going to blow this thing. And of course, they blow this thing. And I felt so bad for my family. So the Steelers should feel ashamed for making the rest of the Weeks clan watch that, and making me watch that, and making everybody else in Pittsburgh watch that. That is the second time in Penguins history, according to Bob Grove, that they've blown a 4-0 lead.
Wow. That's not good company. You don't want to join that team.
No, and I believe the last time was in the 70s.
Yikes. Yeah. Yeah, it's I felt like it was a game earlier in the season. Like I thought we were kind of past this point of that style of play.
It felt like it was like the last week of October, first week of November.
Yeah. I mean, especially like the contributions that they're getting. Drew O'Connor, Jason Zucker twice, and Jeff Carter scoring the goals. I mean, if you get those type of contributions, you think, yeah, this should be an easy win for the Penguins. Especially, not taking anything away from Detroit. They're improving, but I mean, come on now. The Penguins are the better hockey team at this point of where both teams are. So just, a really unfortunate result, and they got outworked for 40 plus minutes. I feel like you started to see cracks as that first period dwindled down, and it just carried over for the next two periods. And this is on the heels of the performance they had against the Islanders just one night before. I thought that was a wake-up call based on what we saw in the first period of that game against Detroit. Nope. They looked like that exact same hockey team the following 40 minutes. I don't know what the answer is here. But all I know is this is a trend at this point. This isn't just like a small sample size. This is a very vulnerable team, in my opinion. Despite the talent that is there, the minute things don't go right, they completely fall apart.
They break down too easily, and that's what my brother-in-law was asking me, like, because I told him last night after I came out of my room that the Penguins lost in overtime 5-4. They blew a 4-0 lead, and he's like, "Oh, does the goalie stink?" I'm like, "It's not even that. It's just the team. Just because you let in 5 goals, the goalie doesn't always stink. The team breaks down in front of them, and I feel like that happens way too easy. Like it is. It's almost like a habit for the Penguins for that to happen. If they don't get a save, it's going to bite them. That it just seems like it's so consistently bad in their own end, and in kind of just kind of at center ice too. I feel like their transition game isn't that great, and so I think that kind of bites them. And their line changes, I don't think they're that great at certain times, and I don't think that overall there's no fluidity to this team, and I feel like it's very high and very low, and it's very low way too often.
They got 46 saves from Casey DeSmith, 46 shots on goal Casey DeSmith had to face last night from the Detroit Red Wings. So it was not a good performance, and that's to say the least. I mean, could Casey have saved 1 or 2? Maybe, but there's not like any part of me that is like Casey DeSmith is the reason they lost this hockey game.
That was still nearly a .900 save percentage. I mean, that's not the best, but it's still for facing how many shots he did. Not all those goals were on Casey DeSmith. I mean, the team just looked bad defensively in front of him for several of those goals. That's been a habit on the Penguins.
They got gritted on it over time.
Gritted on, and I gotta say, like, that cracked me up. I'm not even mad about it. I find that hilarious.
I hate that it happened to the Penguins, but
I hate that it happened to the Penguins, just like Zach Wilson gritted on the Steelers earlier this season. It was just so funny to watch, even as the opposing fan to that team. Like, I hate that we're in this position, but that's so funny. And gritting on ice. I didn't even know it was possible.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's like NHL 23. That can be a celebration or something like that, but it's not. I've never seen it done in person.
Now that it's happened in real life, is it a celebration in NHL 23 already?
It's an intro. It's not like a goal celebration. It's an intro set like thing.
Well, now it could be a goal celebration because it happened in real life.
Yeah. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, honestly, talking about these two players, but like the Steelers have Steelers still stuck on football. The Penguins clearly have a Brian Dumoulin and Jeff Carter issue. And I think it's honestly like I've gotten past the point of these guys can't be playing because honestly, I think that Carter is playable, just not at center. He's got to play in the wing. Brian Dumoulin, I don't think is playable right now, but let's get past that fact and just talk about the deployment of them at least, because if they're going to be in the lineup, Brian Dumoulin cannot be playing 20 minutes a night while POJ is playing 14, and Jeff Carter cannot be on the ice protecting, a 1-goal lead with 2 minutes left. Like, why is he the guy that you are entrusting when you've gotten the results that you have?
Yeah, I'll be honest. If they're putting a center out there, I would much prefer Sid. Like, I understand he's the superstar, and you that's not typically what happens in those scenarios. But I mean, I look at like Boston, whenever the game is in crunch time and they need to win the rest of the game, Bergeron and Marchand are out there. There's no second guessing it. So why can't the Penguins do the same? The Penguins' best defensive lines are their best players. So why would they send out somebody that could be considered a liability? And Dumoulin, I'm done with. He has been so bad. Anybody who's defended him, I hope you can really see just how bad he is this season and know that he should not be on the Penguins. They should not sniff a contract. I'm sure they're not even thinking about it anymore just because of how bad he's been. And I cannot wait for the day that he is no longer on the team. And it sucks to say that because of what the player like Brian Dumoulin has meant to this franchise and meant to this core over the past decade. But, man, it's time to go. That guy stinks, and he was a direct cause for at least one of the goals last night.
I feel like every goal that they give up, you can look on the ice, and he's on the ice. Because he also, I will say the one aspect of his game where he's probably been at least serviceable is on the penalty kill. But obviously, whenever they do give up a goal, he's on the ice there. But also 5v5, it always seems like it's him and Ruda right now, which is a terrible pairing. Like that, they should not be together whatsoever.
Yeah.
As much as I feel like Ruda has kind of fit in, and before Brian Dumoulin, I like the contributions he was giving them. He brought something they didn't have. Now that those two are playing together, they've been awful. It's just, it's a bad situation, and I don't know necessarily what like the answer is, other than obviously POJ getting more minutes and sheltering Dumoulin even more. Now you got Chris Letang potentially out for a little bit. Ty Smith's up and probably going to crack the lineup. That right side D could be Ruda, Friedman, and Ty Smith next time we see this team.
Which Ty Smith is a lefty, I'm pretty sure, so that'll be fun.
He is, but he's played on both sides, just like Friedman has. But yeah, assuming Letang or Ruido aren't going to play tomorrow, that's your right side D right there.
Yeah, that sucks. Because I think that well, it sucks because not only do you have Ty Smith, who's a left-sided defenseman playing on the right, but I think even a guy like Friedman, who is he can play on both. I think he's better on the left.
He's better on his off, yeah.
So that's gonna suck. I don't even know what you do at that point. Do you do you just send out two left defensemen? Because I mean, your best defensemen are left defensemen. It's going to be POJ and Marcus Pettersson. So maybe you just have them as a pairing. I don't know.
How many minutes can they play? Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like I would trust POJ or Marcus Pettersson on their offside as opposed to Friedman or Ty Smith. I mean, Jan Ruda, I still think he's a fine defenseman, but I hate him with Dumoulin. I think he's just a black hole that brings down Ruda with him.
Yeah. Yeah, neither one of them are elevating the other one, obviously. They're just bringing each other down. So. Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about the results that they've had the past couple games, and it's help could potentially be on the way, not for the defense, but Dan Rosen of NHL.com linked the Penguins to, here's a shock, I think this is probably the third or fourth time they've been linked to him, Max Domi. Now, I think that
they were linked. They were linked to him in Arizona. They were linked to him in Montreal. So the fact that they're linked to him again in Chicago makes sense.
I was going to say, now he's in Chicago, which is like a clear seller. Like they might even move on from some of their star players. So I feel like it's a guaranteed Domi's getting moved.
Remember early on in the season that Patrick Kane was linked to the Penguins?
Yeah. I'm curious to see if he does get moved, but it wouldn't be to the Penguins. Ty Domi, obviously, his father having the link that he does to Mario. We've seen Ty Domi in Mario's box before, so I think that because of that connection, he's always going to be linked to them. But I will say, I do think he fills a need. He's a guy that can play left wing or center, and I've been harping on it all season. Basically, my goal for the Penguins season has been to get Jeff Carter away from playing center. So I think, at that point, you can go down the middle with Sid, Gino, Domi, and Bluger. That sounds a lot better to me than having Carter in that role for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, he's on a bad team, so the numbers aren't going to really stand out, but he does have 23 points in 33 games, 11 goals, 12 assists. Plus minus is awful, but I would expect that on Chicago, and plus minus is a stupid stat to look at anyway. But I think that it would fill a need, and surprisingly, it might not be surprising to you. It's surprising to me that he's still 27 years old. For some reason, I thought just because Domi's been around for a while, we've heard of him for a while, I was thinking this guy's 30 now, but he's our age. In fact, I think I'm older than him. So yeah, I'm older than him by 2 days.
Oh wow!
So that just surprised me a little bit. But I mean, his possession metrics for how bad, and I don't know what line he's playing on. I don't know if he's on the Taves line or what, but I feel like he probably would be because I don't think Taves is Kane's center, right?
I do not believe. I mean, I could tell you what line he's playing on, honestly, but I don't believe so.
Well, I'm just saying, just looking at his Corsi percentage, 49.5 on a team like that. I don't know what line he's playing on.
With he's playing
50% still.
He's playing with Tyler Johnson and Patrick.
Oh, okay. So I mean, okay. Now Smitty's gone. But
I have no
Man,
clue.
we're having some issues.
My
We're having some issues.
my USB thing that I have plugged into my laptop, it's like a USB hub. It just
Yeah.
everything. So, but I'm here.
Yeah, but I mean, I was just saying, like, even it's to 49.5%, but even with him having sub 50%, it's still around 50%, and having that on the Blackhawks is at least encouraging. It's not like it's like 45% or worse. So
Mhm.
I think if you're on a team like that, the numbers are what they are. We kind of said the same thing whenever we signed Danton Heinen, and I mean, listen, Danton Heinen hasn't lived up to what we thought and what he looked like early on in the season, but it was kind of just a similar scenario. Like, listen, he's playing on a bad team, so you can rely on the numbers somewhat, but you're going to play better on better teams. So maybe in the Penguin system, he would play better. I don't know how much money does he make on Chicago. Because is this a new contract, or was he traded there on a current contract?
I am actually not
Blackhawks cap
sure.
friendly.
2
I can
year.
check in
No,
a second.
he must have been moved on this. No, 1 year, $3 million.
Okay, so yeah, yep, he's just signed for this year at $3 million. I mean, I feel like the Penguins probably afford that somehow. Maybe they can maybe they could fleece the Blackhawks like they did in 2016 when they traded for Trevor Daley, and they traded Rob Scuderi for him. They could just send Dumoulin for Max Domi.
I like it. I can get down with it.
You're even offloading money at that point.
I know. Yeah, they got to do something. I don't know what the answer is again, but we're seeing a lot of the early season tendencies creep back up for the Penguins, and they got to find their footing here soon because they've lost 3 straight. So I know they got a point yesterday after blowing a 4-0 lead, but not good enough.
And I mean, they did get a point against Carolina, and they did play a tough stretch of games, which I thought the week prior wasn't as bad. Like, even though they lost to Carolina in overtime and then they lost to them 3-2, I still thought it was overall decent efforts. But these past 2 games, especially the debacle that was the Islanders game, and then the complete breakdown that was this Detroit Red Wings game, it was just unacceptable and just a pathetic effort after the first 15 minutes of the first period.
Yeah, they got the Devils probably tonight by the time people are listening to this. Then they obviously have the Bruins in the Winter Classic, Vegas. I mean, I guess after that, you got the competition lessens a little bit, but yeah, they've been in a tough stretch for sure. It's been a good measuring stick, and we see where the Penguins are right now. So should be a wake-up call.
Yeah, do you want to change your I don't know who tweeted it, but they asked where the Penguins going to end up, and I think you said second.
Second, yeah. I said just because like New Jersey has really started to fall off, but hey, the Penguins might be doing the same right now. We'll see. I'm gonna stick with second.
Okay. I said third. So.
Yeah, I said third at the beginning of the season, but it wasn't for the Devils being in front of them. I had the Rangers. I feel like even though a lot of what they did last year,
I think I said second.
Oh, I feel like a lot of what they did by the way, Carolina for sure, number 1. A lot of what the Rangers did last year was so much about special teams and goaltending. They were a pretty mid team at 5-on-5. I still thought that they would be decent enough this year, even though I didn't love their offseason, to be the number 2 team with Igor still playing very well. They haven't been quite that good. They're still obviously in a wild card spot right now. They got their own stuff to figure out, former number 1 pick being healthy scratched in Alexis Lafreniere. So we'll see how that shakes out, but wild stuff going on.
Yeah.
I think that about does it though for this week.
Yeah.
Next time we talk to everybody will be 2023. As crazy as that sounds.
It'll be 2023, and I'll be back in front of my actual microphone and not using AirPods.
People that watch or listen to next week's episode hopefully won't have to deal with what they had to deal with.
They won't have to deal with my microphone, and they won't have to deal with the technical issues. I realize my face is so wide you can't even see my AirPods, so there you go. I do have AirPods.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we will still be putting the link in the description for the Isla Keen Fund, which you've already heard me talk about Isla and the loss of her father. This is the best way to financially benefit her and her future. So the link to that will be in the description of this show. other than that, we wish you all a very happy new year. For Smitty, for Tyler. Oh, and we'll be in touch about when we're going to do the prizes and stuff for those who donated to this year's Rock Around the 412. So stay in touch on that as well. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, like and subscribe on here. We've been posting a ton of shorts, TikTok, all that good stuff. We're posting content everywhere. So follow us, like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys next year. Bye-bye.